Okay, now,
Read
I
it.
will continue. Yeah, no, and I can keep on going from there.
Okay.
Don is one of the artists that's participating in the Exquisite Corpse game, and he's an amazing artist and just got back from a vacation. Well, I say vacation, a summer trip, and he spent it in New York City. And he was there working on a project, a painting project. Is it called Cloning Neptune?
It was upstate New York. It wasn't New York City, but it was New York.
Yeah, it's New York.
Yes, Cloning Neptune. It was the recreation of a 19th century painting called At the Mercy of Neptune. It was originally painted in 1896.
And before we go there and we talk about the project, I would love everybody to get a good feel for an understanding on why I'm always so in awe of Don. I mean, I'm grateful that he hasn't considered me one of his stalkers, because where Don is, I'm always there, I'm always asking questions. Don, I do know that you've been an artist your entire life. Can you share with the audience on how you started your career?
Well, I've always enjoyed painting.
Oh, crap.
Didn't do it?
No. Okay. File. I will take this one. Just file, save project as CTD1. Okay. Close this. I'm so glad I looked, because
Was it not recording?
yeah, no, it wasn't. Okay, there I go. And I'm gonna have to edit that one out of it. As usual, I'm very excited to be here, but today I have the honor and pleasure, as I mentioned, to be with Mr. Artist, Don Gillespie. He is a Mr. also, but you know, I have a hard time using the Mr. with artist. I kind of is too formal. And he just got back from a trip. He was in New York, not necessarily in New York City. He was upstate New York,
yes,
working on a project on a recreate. You were not recreating a painting. You were
cloning a painting.
well, then, yeah, he was recreating a painting. He was cloning a painting, and the project is called Cloning Neptune.
Yes, it was the recreation of a 19th century 9-foot oil painting called At the Mercy of Neptune.
Wow. That's why it's so cool to have him here today, because he just got back, and he is one of the artists that's also participating in the Exquisite Corpse game. Before we go into talking about the project, which is extremely interesting, I would like for our audience around the world to get a better understanding on why I am so excited about Don Gillespie and who the artist is. I know that you've been an artist your entire life. How did you start? Talk to me. Tell us about Don.
Well, as you say, I've always been an artist. You know me. But I started at a very early age. Loved to draw, loved to paint, and went through high school and won honors and got people noticing my work, and decided to go to art school. I went to art school, and then I got a job at Honeywell Space Systems Group here in Clearwater, Florida, and was there for a little over 15 years. Wow. And I was an aerospace artist. I got the opportunity to paint things like Space Station, wow, and heavy lift launch vehicles and lunar colony and manned Mars missions and a lot of defense type of things. Also, you know, back during the days of SDI, all these bizarre concept of hypervelocity rail guns and how to shoot down, wow, nuclear weapons and all those sorts of cool things. So as an artist, to get an opportunity to paint spaceships, it was pretty cool. Then I left there in around 1993, and I became a multimedia artist. And I worked in both video and 3D modeling and interface design. And I still do that. I still have a multimedia company. That's how I make the majority of my income right now. But I'm trying to transition into doing, you know, more of my full-time painting. And so this project this summer was a big plus in that.
Now, and like I said, we will get to the project, How did you decide though? Did you always know you wanted to be an artist?
Yes, I knew from an early age that that's what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't really, that it was just something that I had to do, and it still is. Even when I was doing the multimedia stuff for many years, it still wasn't painting. It was creative and it was interesting, but to really paint, I feel that that's what I was born to do.
And I do know a little more information of Don than most, and so I was kind of leading with that question. But I do know that you know your family history, which the reason why I say you know your family history, because I really don't know mine. I Google stuff and still we just get nothing. In your case, however, you do have a long line of history there, and there is art in your family line, correct?
My older brother is an artist. He taught junior high art for years, for 35 years actually, and then our great grandfather owned an art gallery and was a photographer. And back then, when you were a photographer, artists, photographers are artists, but back then you had to know how to paint also to be a photographer, because the exposure times were so long, things would get blurred and you had to retouch. And he had a staff of artists that worked for him. And he put on presentations with this thing called a polyopticon, which was a kerosene lit 3D projector. And he'd give presentations at his church, and the minister would give a sermon, and he would be showing pictures of the Holy Land, back in the 1800s.
Wow.
And you read these newspaper articles, and it's fascinating. The place was packed out, and he was giving multimedia presentations back in the 1800s.
Wow.
So yeah, it runs in the family apparently.
Now you said your great grandfather. Did it skip a generation? Because in your generation, you and your brother.
My father was a pilot, and my mother. They eventually took over our family milk business, and I grew up peddling milk door to door.
Cool.
But all of my brothers, one's a writer, one's a musician, the other's an artist, and I'm an artist. So my parents were very good at encouraging their children to follow their dream, and to, it was just it was just understood that we were going to follow what we wanted to do. They created a great environment for us.
That's very cool. That is very cool. You don't hear that very often. Normally people always talk about, well, you can be an artist, but do this and go to school so you can have something to fall back on. That drives me crazy when I hear that.
Well, when my brother Bob quit engineering school at Clarkson to be an artist, I think that kind of got a little upset. Then when I came along, he's like, well, okay, Bob seems to do all right. And then when I landed the job at Honeywell, with him being a pilot in the aerospace thing, he was happy about that. And he's 94 years old. He's still doing great. And
oh, good.
He's still a big supporter of everything that we do.
Good. Wow, that's phenomenal. And the fact that, I wonder if, some of his creative ways and thoughts, etc., even though he was, that keeps him young, is what I'm hoping for as I move forward.
Well, he was always a photographer and always loved music. He's sung in the choir and stuff. So, music and art were always a big part of our family.
Part of your life. And you do so well because it shows. Your passion shows. I met you, fell in love with one of your paintings. I was fortunate enough to have that painting around in the studio for a while. Oh my gosh. And I've watched you, I see you. For example, he goes every week to these drawing classes, figure drawing classes, which in all reality, it's mind-boggling because I think, why would you have to go to the class? Actually, why do you go to the class?
Well, I decided a while ago that if I'm going to, I'm no spring chicken. I'm not old, but it's time for me to get serious about this if I really want to do it. And two of the things that have always been a big challenge, I think, for any artist, is painting with water and also rendering the human figure. Those, I would say, for me anyway, and I think there are many artists that would agree, those two things, to do them well, If you can do those two things well, then you're good.
That is, I have heard, well, now that you say that, the figure, water, and one other within the body, hair. To be able to do the detail in hair, I've heard that tends to be difficult for some as well.
Yes, it's one of the distinguishing characteristics of the human figure is your hair. So I would include that in with the human figure. And when you talk about painting water, water is in just about everything. When you look at clouds, clouds are water. Atmospheric perspective, you're looking basically through moisture. So a lot of what we think we're painting is water.
And I do want to encourage our listeners to go to the website, because I will, once this becomes a podcast, I will have some of Don's artwork there and a link to his website so you can see for yourself some of his work. But it's funny the way he says that he continues to learn so he can be more detail oriented, which in my mind is like, whoa, very different. I mean, how much more do you need? With that being said, you just came back from New York. You were working there on a project. Can you just fill us in from how this whole thing, how you got started with this, and then how you wanted to go to New York to work on this? Share this story, please, because it's fascinating.
Well, it started out a few years ago. I knew that my grandfather was a photographer, but I didn't know exactly the details of his career, because nobody ever talked about him, because he vanished in 1898. Nobody knows where he went. My great-grandmother got the Pinkerton Agency involved trying to find him. In 1898, William Shays vanishes from the earth. And nobody ever talked about him because they thought he was a scoundrel that just left his family in a lurch. So there's a fellow in my hometown that put his, he bought a scanner. It was a microfilm scanner at an auction, and he started scanning the old newspapers from the 1800s and started putting them online. And he did it with character recognition. And I found this thing, and I started looking up, stuff about. I'm like, oh, I wonder if there's anything about me in there. And then one day it occurred to me, I'm like, I wonder if there's anything about William Shays in there. And I hit his name, and a whole new world opened up to me. And he was in the paper all the time. He owned this gallery. He was a photographer. He was a bicycle racer. He arranged bicycle races. The more I learned about this guy, the more I realized this guy's like me. And he had an art gallery, and he was a photographer, and he hired artists, and he put on multimedia presentations. And I was captivated by the story of this guy. And then I started finding out that there were two great artists that were friends of his that were from that town, and they were nationally known artists. One was James Gale Tyler, a great marine artist, and the other was Charles Henry Grant. And Grant was a very good friend of his. And I started reading about the grand opening of his new art gallery, and there was this 9-foot painting called At the Mercy of Neptune. And the descriptions of it and the way they wrote back then, I was enamored with it. So I made a copy. Well, first I started searching for it and realized nobody has this thing. Then I decided, well, I'm gonna do a little research on it. And I found a black and white picture, which I believe my great-grandfather took of it. And because he would do that with this artist's work. There was another painting that he did where he did the painting in black and white, like underpainting. My great-grandfather took a picture of it, and then he sold limited edition prints of that and had his people hand color them, and Grant would go on to paint it in full color and sell the painting. So anyway, they unveiled this 9-foot painting in this gallery, and it seems to have vanished. So I have the black and white picture, and I have a description of it, and I started looking at other paintings that Charles Henry Grant did. He moved to San Francisco around the turn of the century and was he became the official artist for the U.S. Navy. He painted Teddy Roosevelt's Great White Fleet. I mean, he was quite the painter. He just had one of his paintings as a centerpiece of the show out in Berkeley at UCLA as a centerpiece of an exhibit called California Captured on Canvas, and they kind of talk about him as a California artist. I'm like, no, this guy was from my hometown. Anyway, so I started looking at I started reading the descriptions and looking at his other paintings, and I found this other painting that seemed to really match what they were talking about. And I thought, can I take this black and white image I have of this painting and take the colors off of this painting and combine the two and make this thing? So I did a small study of it. It's about, 40 inches, 45 inches long. And then I did a study of both those paintings, of the color of them. And then I had this crazy idea last winter. I'm like, I'm going to paint this thing 9 feet. And I don't know when I actually made the conscious decision I was going to do that, but I started really studying this guy, and I started studying his instructor at the National Academy of Design, and found an article about how he taught them to paint, which was the old master's way of painting with burnt umber and burnt sienna as undertones and building up glazes. And so I also found in this article that Winsor and Newton, he said Winsor and Newton London pigments were his favorite. So I got on the phone with Winsor Newton. I said, I'm thinking about doing this big painting. Would you like to sponsor? We'd like to supply paints and brushes. And they turned me over to their PR agency. And the guy said, write me a proposal on it. And I wrote a proposal, and he goes, absolutely. And they gave me all the paints and all the brushes for the project. And just, I was sponsored by Winsor & Newton, which is my favorite. My favorite. It was like a dream come true. And the whole project, from that point on, it was just like everything fell into place. It was meant to be. I got in touch with the person up there in charge of community development and started getting involved and met the mayor. And the county decided they were going to get behind the project, because they wanted to promote Oswego County. So they helped me get a gig at the New York State Fair.
Nice.
So I finished the painting at the New York State Fair. At this point, I should probably tell you the history of the painting. So the painting is unveiled at my great-grandfather's art gallery, and it goes through and they do this grand opening, and then later that year there's a fire in the gallery, and the painting doesn't burn, but it gets scorched and it gets hosed down. It has a lot of damage. It almost destroys it, but the artist gets it back, and he repairs it, repaints portions of it, and he takes it to the New York State Fair in 1897. And that's one of the reasons why I finished the painting there. But so he shows up at the 1897 New York State Fair, and he gets rave reviews. And then it comes back, and a judge in town buys it, and he owns it till 1928. It hung in their home until he died. And I found in his will where he willed it to his wife, Emma. And Emma, I read, just died in like the old lady's home eventually. I'm like, well, how did the whole thing transpire? Where's the painting? As I looked into it more this summer, and what it appears to have happened is, so the guy dies in 1928. The painting hangs on the wall of the house, and then in 1932, Emma loses that house in a foreclosure to the savings bank. So this judge owned a lot of properties. And so what I figure is either she takes the painting, somebody in the family takes the painting out of the place because they don't want the bank to get it, they don't tell anybody, or it hangs on the wall in the house and somebody from the bank gets it and stashes it somewhere. But it's in that foreclosure in 1932, so there's a window of about 4 years. I suppose she could have sold it. So I don't really know what happened to the painting, but it may be rolled up in somebody's basement or an attic, and that's one of the things I hope, that repainting this thing 9 feet, somebody's going to see that thing, and maybe it'll like
resurface somewhere.
Yeah, it'll resurface. The odd thing about this painting also is it's and I'm sure there'll be a picture of it online, but it's a ship that's caught in the breakers just off the rocks, and it's called At the Mercy of Neptune, and you don't know if this ship is going to survive or not. It really looks like a bad situation, but there's this miraculous wind, and I talked to some of the sailors as they came through the museum this summer, and they said that's a classic microburst, and sometimes when a ship gets near the shore like that on a steep rocky cliff, the wind will bounce off of there and catch into the sails, and it'll pull it a little bit off the coast. So that's you don't really know if the ship survived or not, but you know it's been through this storm, and it speaks of the life of the painting itself.
The life of the painting and the life of the painter, because he disappeared also.
Well, my grandfather disappeared. Grant went out to San Francisco.
Your grandfather disappeared.
Yeah, my grandfather disappeared, and I've got theories on that after reading and opening up some court documents. It appears that my grandfather, he got charged with 40 imprudences with a woman named Stella Fletcher, and she was
a woman involved.
She was a very attractive woman in town. And granted, if you're a photographer and you're going to take pictures that promote your gallery, you're not going to pick, an ugly, any homely person. You're going to pick the best-looking girl in town. And she was married, and she had an extremely jealous husband. And he refuted every one of the charges. The guy was insanely jealous. I can't say whether there was actually anything going on between her and him or not. I know he was abusive. One of the papers stated that and I love the way they wrote back then. They said the green monster hovered above his bed nightly and whispered jealous tales in his ear until he became as moon mad as Othello, and in further replication of the Shakespearean character, choked his wife vehemently on several occasions. So this guy was a nut.
Wow.
And I think my great-grandmother and my great-grandfather were actually, could have been trying to help her get out of this abusive relationship. But this guy was bad news. And I read later on, which the Pinkerton Agency and all these other people wouldn't have had access to because it was a divorce settlement, that there was an incident in a hotel, and it tells very clearly what happened. That the husband gets news that his wife is there, so with a strange man. So he goes in, he goes upstairs, knocks on the door. He's got 4 of his thug buddies there, and they knock on the door, and the guy opens the door, and he sticks his foot in the door, and the 5 guys burst into this room. Stella's laying on the bed, and there's a guy standing there with his suspenders down, and she's fully dressed, he's fully dressed, and Fletcher goes, "Who are you?" And the guy says, "None of your business." And then he goes over to the bed and turns Stella over and says, "Is this my wife?" "Yes." And so then they all leave. And this is corroborating testimony. And I don't believe that incident for a moment.
Mm.
I think they probably knew who he was, and they laid wait for him and did him in. It could have been him. I don't know that for sure, but that's a speculation on my part.
I love the fact also that there is so much history. One thing is looking into history and finding out and doing research, and then history that pertains to your own family line.
Well, yeah, it just had to. As I studied the artist, this Charles Henry Grant, he leaves the town and goes to San Francisco at the turn of the century, and he starts painting battleships. And he travels with the Navy and goes to Australia and does these beautiful battleship paintings. And really, battleships at that time were like the spaceships of our day.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy kind of did the same type of stuff that I was doing.
So
it was like a kindred spirit in this, and that's one of the, I had an art show and I called it Kindred Spirits, where I actually, when I finished the painting, I had a final show of an unveiling of the painting, and I brought some of this guy's paintings around from the college up there owns one, and the state or the city owns another one, and the Marine Museum owns one, and I own one. So we had paintings there from all of these old artists, and then we had contemporary artists. We had works from some of the students that I taught while I was up there. I taught all ages. I taught college classes. I taught children that were 6 to 16. I taught adult classes, and I had them all together in one big show. These you know, the next generation artists, the current artists, my intern that I had working with me, Mike Wills from SUNY Oswego, the State University there. He helped me. But it was just a great experience, and we had the show in this old Civil War barracks. It was great.
And I'm sure they're very sad now that you left, because it seemed like there was a lot going on during your presence there. But one of the things I really want to touch on, because it's just amazing, you know, from all the artists in the world, how you wind up, you know, finding the story, and it immediately intrigued you, and all this research that you've done, and now come to find out that there's so many similarities in different parallel universes at different times, but there's so many similarities between the two. That's really mind-boggling.
Yeah, the whole thing was very spooky. And right in the middle of the project, the historian from the county calls me up and says, Don, did you hear about this woman, A.T. Bell? I'm like, no. He says, well, I was investigating this other thing for the Historical Society, and this newspaper article is all about your painting. I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, this woman, A.T. Bell, was a student of Grant's, and she painted a copy of that painting also, back around the turn of the century. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm like, that's perfect, because I can see if my colors, the assumptions I made on the colors are right. I said, do you know where it is? He goes, well, yeah. He says it burnt up in a fire at Riverside Cemetery, where all these people are buried. I'm like, what do you mean it burned up in a fire in a cemetery? She was the caretaker's wife, and at the caretaker's mansion, there was a fire, and this only other copy of At the Mercy of Neptune burned. And I'm like, this fire is following this painting around. So when you say, are they glad that, are they sad that I'm gone? I think they're sad that I'm gone, but they're also a little nervous that I left the painting there at the museum.
Well, because there was one other incident, right?
Yes, I was telling you. Like, painting was done. We took it to the frame shop, and we were putting it in the frame, and we got it all set. It was like, okay, it's finished, it's framed and everything. We set it, and we're going to take it over to where the show was going to be. And they had a truck parked outside, this big panel truck that we're going to load it into. I said, well, let's put it in the truck. And the woman goes, no, we can't. I said, what? He said, there's a fire truck blocking it. I'm like, what do you mean? I go outside, and there's a fire truck parked in back of the truck, blocking us from being able to put the painting in the truck. And there had been a fire next door while we were framing the painting.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh. So when I told the curator of the museum that, I think they're going to get more fire insurance for the museum.
Yeah, that it would behoove them to do so. Wow, it's like it leaves me speechless.
I got to write a book about it, because this just anybody that wants to tackle a good writing project, you contact me, because it really needs to have a book written about it, because it was a fascinating story, and those artists knew how to paint water.
How did it make you feel while you were going through the process and emotions? Now, you were in New York for almost 3 months. How long did it take you? And were there experiences while you were going? I mean, obviously, it's been a life-changing experience for you.
Yeah.
Because you were saying earlier, I mean, you're a very scientific mind. You're not one to believe in much of any type of hocus pocus or any type of things. However, you just experienced some things during this process. So
yeah, there were times when I felt as though I was just being led along, and all these doors and pathways were opening up to me. Good friends of mine, I ran the whole project through a nonprofit organization called the Barbara Gould Foundation. Great friends of mine. They actually came up when I started the project. And so then I have some other friends that allowed me to stay at their camp right on Lake Ontario. And my friend Jimmy, they live on the side of this cliff on Glacial Till right on Lake Ontario. And every other camp on the side of the road has fallen into the lake. And he works construction. He brought all these huge rocks and built this peninsula. And so his camp kind of now sits out sort of on this peninsula. And my head, while I was sleeping, was literally about 20 feet from waves crashing. And here the painting is of waves crashing. So I'm dreaming waves all night. I'm painting waves during the day. They don't have fresh running water out there, so I'm taking baths in Lake Ontario every day. So it was like being back in time. It was a wonderful experience. And then the state fair experience was awesome also, knowing that, that I got a lot of press coverage for that and met a lot of really cool people. It was a strange experience. I'm very comfortable painting with a lot of people around now. I'd be painting with it. I noticed around 6 o'clock in the evening, I'd get enough paint. This state fair lasts for a couple of weeks up there. I'd get enough paint going, wet oil paint, that I can really start making stuff happen. And I'd turn around and there'd be like 30 or 40 people
just
watching me munching on corn behind me. It was fun though. People would come up, and one guy comes up, he goes, "Charles Henry Grant." He says, "I know this artist." He says, "Was he live in Oswego?" I said, "Yeah." "Long time ago?" "Yeah." "On 4th Street?" "Yeah." "I used to live in that house." And so he told me that there was still paint on the floor and that there was this skylight that had been cut in the roof of his house. So I went over to that house after I got back from the fair, and I got in touch with the owner and took a little tour of the attic of that house. I actually went back in, probably in the room where this painting was painted.
Wow.
It was just bizarre. I've got pictures of the skylight, where the skylight was. A different ceiling is in there now. So, but there was a real tall ceiling, and it went all the way up to the rafters, and he had this big ground glass. Gosh, the thing must have been like probably 7 by 7 feet skylight right on the north side of the house. It just must have streamed light, and on the other side of the room there were windows all along it. And the owner of the house he told me all sorts of stories about how there used to be tales that the house was haunted, because his father was a master carpenter and built this big studio onto the back of the house for him. But then in 1906, I think it was, his dad was 70 years old and climbed out onto this ledge from the attic and fell and broke his back and then died just a couple years later. And it was right around that time that Grant decided to move to San Francisco. The mom went into a home up with some family, and the house just was left there for years and years and years. They said they used to call it the hoodoo house.
Oh,
like
wow.
Voodoo, weird stuff.
And when you were there, how did it feel?
I was just curious. I didn't get any willies from it or anything like that.
Did you feel like you were home or comfortable? Or
very comfortable.
I'm just really wondering if maybe you were.
Well, it was real. Even I remember one morning, I wanted to find out. The guy that owned the painting originally was L.C. Rowe, this judge. And my intern shows up in the morning. He goes, I said, "We're going on a field trip today." He goes, "Where are we going?" I said, "We're going to the graveyard." He's like, "What?" So we went out to the graveyard. I said, he goes, "Well, we got to talk to these people." I'm like, "No, we're going to get dates off of tombstones, but we got to find them." So we went in this old cemetery where the copy of the painting burned. We didn't know it then, but we went back up on this hill and found the tombstones of Emma and Louis C. Rowe, and their son was named Charlie. They might have named their son after Charles Henry Grant. I know they were good friends, but that kind of stuff doesn't freak me out. Even when we had the show at the old Civil War barracks out by Fort Ontario, that I had all these old paintings that were on loan from the State University and the city and the Marine Museum. I've worked very hard to build these relationships with people. I've got like over $50,000 worth of paintings sitting in this thing, plus At the Mercy of Neptune, and the history of that. And the fire alarm kept going off at the museum randomly. Anyway, I slept there for 3 nights while the show was running. All those old paintings were there.
Wow.
They held it over. They held the show over another week, and I took the old paintings and gave them back to their respected places and left it unattended. But people were saying, well, you're gonna sleep in that museum out there at the fort. Those buildings are haunted. That stuff doesn't
bother you.
It doesn't bother me at all. I feel right at home with all those guys.
That's amazing.
I too.
Now you're home. You just got back. What happens next?
Well, we got the Exquisite Corpse project.
Yes.
I'm really excited about that. It's so great to work with the artists that are involved in this and with you. That's going to be so much fun. We're also I'm gonna do another big project, a large. Now that I'm getting better at painting water, I'm going to do a large painting of the new Orion spacecraft that splashes down like the old Apollo capsule did. So I'm going to do a large scale painting, probably. I don't know if I'll do it 9 feet tall. One thing I discovered doing something 9 feet long is a lot of molding for framing comes 10 feet, and you better be good at making that cut. When they ordered the frame, we ordered the frame for this 9 foot by 67-inch painting. It's supposed to be coming up from New York City. I mean, that's an $800 frame. And I ordered it like plenty of time, 2 weeks in advance. And I kept calling them saying, well, it's not here yet. It's not here yet. And it's like a week before the show's going to open, and it's still not there. I'm like, what's it going to come? I was going to come in next Tuesday. I said, the show starts Friday. Why are we waiting this long? Well, sure enough, Tuesday the frame came in, and the lady goes, well, now I can tell you why. I said, what? She said, what? They delivered the frame a couple weeks ago, but it was 67 inches by 9 inches. Not 9 feet. It's 108 inches. So that whole thing, I'm glad you didn't tell me.
Now, you just got back. Are you familiar with all that's been going on around St. Pete with the murals?
Yeah, I saw the mural that Carrie made.
That's what I was asking the question for, because you're on your way tonight to Soft Water Studios to do the drawing. Carrie Jadis, one of the artists who's also participating in Exquisite Corpse. She's the owner of Soft Water Studios. And she did she's done now 2 murals.
Is that Tesla?
Tesla, yes.
I saw that. I got to see. I haven't seen the building yet.
And apparently now on the other side of the building, you'll get there with light. And on the other side of the building now, she did a 2nd mural. Oh. So she has gone from canvas to these huge murals, and listening to your challenges, and the things that you go through, watching these artists, how they've had to sketch out and tape out, and this is a whole different ballgame when you're going that large and to figure it out. Well, it's quite fascinating.
There's such a cool vibe going on in St. Pete now in the arts. It's amazing. And Carrie and Mark, and I just love what they're doing up there.
With the Art Exchange, Mark Haling is the president of the Warehouse Art District, and he's also a public artist, sculptor. He's also one of the participating artists in Exquisite Corpse.
Oh, was he doing part?
Yeah, excellent. He actually, he's on the sculpture side, on 3D. We've been very fortunate. We have another artist on the sculpture side that you may know. His name is Rocky Bridges, and he does sculpture, so he's also participating in the game. And I mean, it's just all come together incredibly. And if you're wondering what we're talking about, and if you haven't heard about it yet, it is the Exquisite Corpse. It's a game that's been played for almost 100 years, and we have taken it to a whole new level in 3D, which has not been done before, and 2D somewhat has been done, but not in this way either. And each artist was selected, and you have to be invited. And rule number 1 was have fun, and rule number 2 was you are sworn to secrecy. And you see that little card there, right here in front of you. We actually, at the launch party, what we did was we bought all-made cards, and I either highlighted the head, the torso, or the legs, and then people would get it in a little envelope and take it out, and that's how they knew what part of the body they were doing of the corpse. And it has become a very fun event, and everybody's looking forward to it, meaning all the artists participating are looking forward to it, and the unveiling will be at the Museum of Fine Arts on November 12th. And what better venue to do something like this than at a Museum of Fine Arts?
That's going to be a great party.
It's been phenomenal. With this experience that you've just had, with all the research that you did for this painting, and now obviously you're fascinated still, there's parts of the story there. What else? Is there more that you can find out, or this is it when it comes to that project and you will be in search of another interesting story?
Well, I want to do this big Orion painting, and really it's a follow-on, because again, you know, these great painters painted the exploration ships of their time, and that's what I want to do. I want to paint. You know, artists paint for their time. I've been stuck in the 19th century for a long time, and I want to take what I've learned with that and bring it forward. But there'll be, you know, all of these projects that we're working on now. It seems like they're gonna live on. I know that they're talking about putting together a show. I put in the contract when I donated the painting to the Marine Museum up there that it would be able to travel for 3 months out of the year. And they're talking about even doing more and putting together a traveling show with that painting as one of its centerpieces. And so that'll be nice. With Exquisite Corpse, it's going to go on to other countries.
But you are actually doing work that does leave legacies and will continue on for generations to come. I do know that you're a very talented artist. You're also a dad, and a caring, loving dad and grandfather. What better gifts that you can continue to leave your, you know, generations to follow than what you're doing? It's just so. I'm excited that you're the first artist that I've interviewed, and I've interviewed amazing artists, but you're the first one that's doing something that's very history driven.
Yeah, there was
a trail.
There was a lot of facets to this, and the most exciting part of it for me was teaching the kids. There's a Central New York Art Center in upstate New York, and I got to teach there for several weeks. These kids from age 6 to 16. I taught the adults and taught college classes. And I much prefer teaching the little kids. They're just so uninhibited, and sure enough, you find there's 2 or 3 of them that just excel. And there were really about 4 kids that just their work was fantastic, and I put it in the show. I put them right alongside Charles Henry Grant and James Gill Tyler's work and my stuff, and all these adults of the so there was a lot of different facets to it, is inspiring these young artists and teaching them how to. I taught them everything from how to paint water to how to paint space painting. They love to paint aerospace paintings. I taught them about double loading a brush and kind of making an atmosphere, and how to use a toothbrush to make stars, and they just ate that stuff up and did some beautiful work. So that was exciting, you know, because part of it is just inspiring that next generation.
Absolutely, and I feel that everybody has a responsibility to, you know, to find what they can do for that next generation. And that's amazing to me.
And even if they don't go on to do art as a career, you've taught them to, in order to render something, in order to paint something, you really have to study it and understand it, and to look at things with not just a technical mind, but with an artist mind, and do it. You know, that's where I think real, you call it out of the box thinking comes from. It's being able to meld those 2 things and just, you know, just really understanding what you're seeing and why you're seeing it. It helps them to understand the world, even if they don't go on to be an artist. They're going to look at the world a little differently from spending some time with you, and that's.
And if they only knew who they spent the time.
In the water.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is, who they had the opportunity to spend the time with, which it's just all so incredible to me, and what a great experience. I cannot thank you enough for being here today. I do want to ask one more question. We did mention briefly Exquisite Corpse, and it's different for each artist. How was the experience for you of participating?
Well, I was right in the middle of this huge painting project. So it was good to have something else to work on besides that, because I've been painting that large painting for months, and thinking it out and saying, okay, now I can't put one strong light source on this, because nobody, the other artists that are doing the other parts, they're not gonna be able to put a dramatic light onto it. So we got to stay a little bit nebulous with that. And this thing could have an animal head, it could have an insect head, it could have a robot head, who knows? So there was that aspect of it.
Don't say what other part of the body you may have gotten. So that leaves us 2 other parts, but you don't know which part you did.
Yeah, you got to stay kind of nebulous,
yes,
on that aspect also. And then as far as putting one weight on one leg or the other leg, if it does have legs, so it was a real mind twister to think, okay, I'm doing this and somebody else is doing all these other parts, and how do I envision this working with whatever else could be there? And it was I've never worked like that before.
Good.
And it really helped me to think things out. I kind of overthink things. I drew out, okay, I knew what the dimensions were on the body piece and how the head piece is, and how, okay, if they do this, then it's got to, the legs, this section needs to be, at this part of the waist. And it just really.
You thought it out a lot.
I thought it out a lot.
That's good.
I probably overthought it. I just look forward to seeing what comes of it, what the other people did.
And it's so exciting to hear you say that, because part of the purpose of the game, number 1, was to have fun. Number 2, secrecy. And then we go into the purpose, and our goal was to get artists out of their comfort zone and to encourage collaborations. I know that for this project you brought in some help, or some intern to work with you. But are you used to collaborating on work?
I've collaborated with my brother before on murals.
Oh, nice.
I'd like to work with other artists. I think the exchange of ideas that happens, working in a multimedia company, I ran a multimedia company that, we had 72 people working for us, media specialists, engineers, artists. I had like 24 artists that worked for me at one time. And all those projects were collaborative works. And, to create a framework. And then engineers and artists think so differently, just putting things onto the server. Artists will just throw stuff onto the server. And engineers will say, what is this? So we had to develop a system. So we had to make it helped the engineers to be more, thinking more like artists, and the artists had to think more like engineers, and it stretched them. And I think that's kind of what we do too when we work with other artists is, maybe I work very tight and somebody else works very loose. So I want to stay a little bit looser and try to go outside my comfort zone. And then, there was a point in this project where I just said, right, I just got to have fun with this thing. I can't overthink it. And then, I just decided to put in some really crazy things that you'll see.
I can't wait. I am so excited. I'm working on the logistics side and administrative side. So there's always, there's things that I'm still working on that need to come together. But from the game perspective, nothing else matters. It's like everything else is just, and it's flowing the same way it flowed for you when you were in New York. I know we were meant to do this game. This actually fell on my lap, and I decided to, pursue it. And of course, I went straight to Don. So, what do you think about this? Because you were the person. Your mind. I've always loved your mind because it's very engineering and scientific as well. But you're also very creative, and now I understand why you're that way. You created these bridges a long time ago.
Yeah, I worked with engineers for years and years and years ago. Well,
so it made it easy.
Yeah.
But I am really excited to see how this whole thing comes together as well. And I do know that we're doing it for the right reasons, with the right people, and it's all timing. Is there any places here? Are you giving any classes? I know you work proactively in the Clearwater area, correct?
I live in Tampa. I really am a bit of a gypsy right now. I don't have a home. And I don't necessarily want a home, because if I had a home, I wouldn't have been able to do what I did this summer.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got friends, and I've got family, and all of them are very interested in having me around. So that's a good thing.
Very
so
good
I'm just, I'm not doing any classes. I'd like to start doing some classes. I probably will through the Barbara. I'm going to get more involved with the Barbara Gould Foundation. But there's just, part of it is just following those doors that open up and not
we have
trying
here in
to.
St. Pete the Moran Center that also there's classes that come out of there, and right now there's a new executive director, and they're being very aggressive and wanting to create new classes and new ideas. And you just fill that profile so well. So I would love to see.
My eyes are open this summer. I mean, some of my friends up in New York. I got a real good friend, Becky, that she just started, for all these different events I was doing, she just started bringing food to them, and she did artwork in food, and that was. And then, right in the middle of it, she decided, well, I'm going to try out for this cooking class or a cooking show. And she went down to New York and tried out for this cooking show, and who knows what will come of it, but she mentioned that I helped inspire her to do that.
Aww.
So anything like that we do that inspires each other, the more I'm in the field of art, the more I realize it's not about us creating these paintings and things like that. It's really about inspiring others to be creative, because it fulfills something in their lives. Get these kids, the digital devices are great, but to get them off of those and start painting, and then,
We are at crossroads right now, and you and I come from a generation where we were fortunate enough to see some of the old school stuff. Because I remember my grandfather giving me a camera, that the ones that you lift up and they have mirrors like all around them, or magnifying glasses, and you look down to take the picture, and it's black and white film. And when you think of that, it's not that I'm super duper old, because I'm not, but it's that the technology, then we come from a time that technology just started developing. So we've been able to see that, and that's the good news. But it's been taken to a whole other extreme, and so much has been lost. And right now, I have spoken to people in their 20s, 21. They say, my generation is horrible. I don't feel like I have anything to look forward to.
I think the pendulum has, the world was analog for a long time. It's swung over to digital. But I think it's it needs to swing back to the blend of the two. And I was teaching this girl, she's 12 years old, Brianna, how we're painting arrows, we're painting space, and I drew the globe, and I said, well, you can draw a North American continent in the South America, and I looked over, and I was drawing it from memory, and she had her phone out, and she had Googled, and she was doing a much better job at drawing the continent. So she was blending the analog with the digital, and that's what we need to do.
Correct. Create those, right. And bring them together and create those, because again, that mentality, old school, new school. Whereas that in between is what I really believe that we should continue to encourage.
Use the digital to enhance your analog life.
Oh, there's a statement. And being on internet radio, I think I'm going to use that. Don, we have run out of time. It's been an honor and pleasure to have you here today. Where can people reach you? Where's your website? How can they find out more about you?
You can go to www.mybrushstrokes.com or www.cloningneptune.com. and take it to the same place, basically. But that's where I am.
And there you can find out more about Don, hopefully as he continues to travel the world with his art and projects and what he's doing, because he will be traveling the world, I know. You're just an amazing artist. I'm so honored to have
Thank
you
you.
here. But you can continue to follow Don. You have been listening to Connect with Dr. Ben Marie. We are all connected in one way or another. And this show is about people, empowering people, as I always say, preferably through the arts. Enjoy the rest of your week. And today at 6:30, nothing, forget that. Yeah, it's not today at 6:30. Let me save this real
We
quick.
can do that later.
Yes, save project as. Connect the dots. 10. What will next Wednesday be? So today, what do you know what today is?
Today's the 13th.
Today's the 13th. So the 21st is when this is gonna air. So you know. 10, 21. Oops. Connect the dots.
So you think that went well?
Very well. You're kidding me? And then done.
I get involved in that story about my painting. I wonder if people really it's like,
People
it's
do
such
care.
It's such a detailed story.
But there's so much. This is what I was going to ask you. You mentioned a book. What about a documentary?
Oh yeah.
You should film. I mean, I would love to participate in that. This kid, Justin, he's really, really good. Mm-hmm. And what I'm thinking, because I want a project so I can take to the film festival, Sunscreen Film Festival. My goal is to get to Sundance Film Festival and then wherever it goes from there. But this is something very educational as well. There's so many elements to it. Number one, as an artist, you found something that you were intrigued with and that changed your life. And then all the research you started doing and then coming to find all these parallel, these similarities. I mean, it just goes on and on and on.
It does.
So you can touch so many people from so many different angles.
Yeah, I think it would be a good. I've been thinking about the book. It would be a good book, and it would be a good movie.
You need to start writing or start recording these thoughts of yours, and you can do that on your phone. You can write it.
It could take all sorts of different
angles
because it could be a book for artists on how to do research. For young artists.
That's my point. That's exactly my point. Because you did research, you found information, and you continue to keep on. So there's so much to it, which motivated me because I love writing, and I'm thinking, but that's what I have to do. I love telling the stories, so I have to find these type of things where what I don't have to do the research because you did it all. So but being able to follow that, you have a story. So here's what's going to happen. I am going to put it out there as well. There's 2 or 3 people that I do know that are real writers. They're not me. That they have written before. And because of what you're doing is so... I was shocked how you just memorized that clip that you read from the newspaper word for word. Which, by the way, I'm impressed also with the way they used to write. See, I don't write that way. And they don't write, not very many people write that way anymore. But there are good writers out there. You need somebody that can really connect at that level also when it comes, to the writing and the script part. But this is Justin, you'd be surprised.
If you read some of the reviews of the painting at the Mercy of Neptune,
I'm going to.
I can say just some. It's just
please.
It's amazing that the way they wrote, and they talk about, they're just talking about art. And they're reporters on art, which is really what you are,
Right.
And the way they wrote, and there's a great article I need to send you.
And you were in New York for crying out loud. We're not talking about that you were in Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama, or you were in New York.
Yeah.
It has so much history as well. The town where you're from, you have all this history. I mean, there's so much. This goes into many layers. This could be the rest of your life, just.
Yeah. Well, I want to take it. I want to take it to space.
Wow, that is so cool.
This new Martian movie is cool.
Did you see it?
Yeah.
I loved it. I didn't think I was going to like it. And you get stuck on Mars, and what's going to be interesting. He really did a really good job with the whole movie and the thought process, and it was so good to see because he was educated.
Yeah. It was like,
and he knew.
It was like a ship. It was like somebody that was shipwrecked on an island.
Correct.
Really. It's like a Robinson Crusoe story.
Well, not
really what it
just
is.
somebody being, but somebody with that brain, because
Yeah,
that's the thing.
botanist.
If it would have been me, I would have been toast by now, you know. But they were able to go capture him because he figured things out.
Yeah.
And the things he did, I was fascinated by the movie, so I just saw it too. I know your class is about to start.
I got a whole button here.
But yeah, you will see the mural. So when you go up, so when you come out of here, I was just gonna say, when you come out,
I can walk around. Right.
This is freaking incredible. Wow. Jeez. So. Where are the lines for the twist? Wow. Wow. Hold on a second.